Hi BookTube, I'm here to talk about the books I read this week from last Sunday to this Saturday. I've read quite a few books, including some mammoths and some mysteries, so let's get into it. The first book I completed was Moving On by Larry McMurtry, and this was a mammoth. It is 832 pages. I'm disappointed to say that it wasn't as good as two of the other books I've read by him. I read Lonesome Dove and I've read The Last Picture Show. And I know a lot of people are reading Lonesome Dove for their mammoth pick. And that kind of prompted me to pick up Moving On because it's been on my wish list to read. I like the beginning of the story, but since it was a really long book, the middle kind of dragged. It didn't have as much of a plot as I wished. The beginning opened up with, it's mainly focused on a young married couple who, they have a lot of money. They come from money, but they don't, the husband at least does not want to spend it. He wants to be very frugal and act like he doesn't have money. But the wife, she's okay with spending it. But so it's kind of like, it starts off with them, kind of like with a tiff with that. So he's kind of directionless. He doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. So he randomly decides to be a photographer and follow the rodeo. He decides he wants to focus on cowboys and the rodeo. And so that part was a little fun because Larry McMurtry is really good with like settings and especially, capturing that Western atmosphere. And so it's following them, like going all these different rodeos and meeting all these like cast of characters of, like rugged cowboys or, like bloody, gruesome things that happen with the horses and all sorts of stuff like that. And so they're traveling all over the West, capturing these pictures. And they're kind of like, you can kind of tell from the very beginning that the marriage isn't the happiest, because the wife is kind of like fed up with him because she can see how his interest is lagging, and she's known, it mentions how she's already kind of put up with him with trying to find a career in the past, and this is just another one of his whims that he goes on. So eventually it kind of peters out. He is wanting to be a photographer, so he goes back to Houston where they were living previously. And from that point on, the book kind of stagnates for me. It's not much of a plot. It's just them constantly kind of like bickering. There's this constant like antagonism between them, the two of them, conflict. But it's never, they're not really ever like a drawn out fight between the two. It's just them constantly unhappy with each other, and like they're very like different personalities and then very different wishes. So really, because of that, and it was such a long book, I mean, and it just kept going on and on, like the same like tone. I didn't really enjoy it as much because Lonesome Dove has a lot of action in it, on the characters and their journey that they're going on compared to this one. So let me know if any of you have read this book, what you thought of it. The next book I read, I highly enjoyed. It was one that I've seen on BookTube quite a bit, but I hadn't picked it up. It's Maisie Dobbs by Jacqueline Winspear. And this is a mystery historical fiction. I'd say it's more historical fiction than mystery. It has like it's written kind of weirdly in that it opens up with a mystery of Maisie Dobbs trying to help this woman, because there's this man that comes up to her who he's suspicious of his wife. He doesn't know what she's doing, like where she's going each day. Instead of like staying at home, she doesn't have a job, so where's she going? And so he hires Maisie Dobbs, who is kind of like a detective, to figure out what's up with his wife. So it opens up with that scene, but then it jumps to Maisie Dobbs, her kind of like from her very young childhood. It tells the story of her childhood, and then how she becomes a nurse, and her journey with her historical fiction part is really about World War I, because she is a nurse on like the front in like France. And so it's her journey with her friends, becoming a nurse, going there, and of course she meets a man. And so most of the story there is her her interactions with this man that she's considering to date. And so then it jumps back to the mystery. So it's a little bit disjointed, but it was really entertaining reading, especially the part about Maisie Dobbs herself, like her life story. It was really fascinating reading. So I do plan on picking up the next one. And it seems to me, from what I've looked in the series, that they're all going to be like war-related or historical fiction, bet more than the mystery. Maybe the mystery part will be more involved in the second one, but we'll see. So this is what I read for the March Mystery Madness. And then this next one is another one I read for March Mystery Madness. I love the cover and I love the name. It's a little bit of a twist on a cozy mystery. It's Brownies and Broomsticks by Bailey Cates. And this is the first book in the Magical Bakery Mystery. And this is Katie Lightfoot, who she moves from Ohio to Savannah to help open up a bakery that's put on by her aunts, I believe. Yes, her aunts. And her aunts are like witches. And her family is witches, are witches and wizards. But her parents have not told her. She grew up not knowing that she was a witch. And so when she goes to Savannah, her aunt's kind of like springing on her, you know, that they're called hedge witches, where they use like herbs. And so in the bakery, you know, of course, they're using like, herbs and stuff in their food. And so it's a mystery because there's this angry, like disgruntled customer who gets murdered right near their shop. And her uncle is suspected of being the murderer. And so it's all about, you know, her journey with learning how to be a witch and like kind of like resolving with that within herself, and working at the bakery and trying to solve this crime. It was a really light, fun mystery. And this next one isn't so light. It's a history book that I picked up. The Eternal Frontier by Tim Flannery. I really like the cover. And this is a nonfiction book, kind of like a history book on the United States predominantly. It does talk about North America, like Canada and Mexico, but it's mainly focusing on the U.S. part of the nature and the animals and flora and fauna of the United States. But it also incorporates history in that, you know, as time goes on, when they're talking about the part, you know, when humans become predominant on in the United States, then it focuses on history, mainly to do with how they're interacting with the animals and the landscape. It's kind of harrowing read, I guess you could say, because of course we know about like, you know, how they how us nasty humans were killing all the buffalo, and of course like the wars with the Indians. But then I learned a lot more about like the pigeons. There's this like horrible part where there's just so many like passenger pigeons, kind of like how the buffalo were like big herds were you know, roaming in the plains. Well, there was also herds of passenger pigeons, and there were so many that there was like making a sport out of it. Like, how many can you shoot? And there was these piles of like mountains of birds that these people would just like shoot, and they were like just shot for fun. And it's just like it was like described like all these like mounds and mounds of birds that just for nothing, like hundreds and hundreds at once. And so of course they became extinct. So yeah, it was really very informative read. It was really well written, and I flew through it. And a couple of his other books are on my wish list to read. I will definitely be picking up more of him. Yeah, so that's the other one I read. Let's see. The next one was just delightful. I wanted something a little bit more light after reading the ecology book, because it didn't only just focus on like the past of what's happened, how, you know, how the planet and how the continent has evolved over time, but it also is focusing on, you know, what the future is going to bring, which isn't always the brightest. We can always hope, but yeah. So anyway, I wanted something a little bit lighter, and so I decided to go with Heaven to Betsy by Maud Hart Lovelace. And this is a book I'm reading that a couple other booktubers are doing. Like they're reading all of the Betsy Tacy series throughout the year, and so this is the book for this month, and this is the 5th book in the Betsy Tacy series. And at this point, she is entering high school. She's 14 years old. This is Betsy I'm talking about. And I don't know about you, but my high school experience was not like her high school experience. She's very excited to go, and she makes lots of friends, and she's worried. She was initially worried about getting a beau, or, you know, meeting boys, but she honestly has no trouble having boys that are friends, and then, you know, having partners to pair up with, like to go ice skating and such. So if only all of our high school experiences were so nice and lovely. But yeah, this was a really fun read. There was at some points, like kind of like reliving my high school experience. I don't know, like just reading about her stories. I was just like on the edge of my seat, like, oh, you know, what is the guy gonna say, or what is her friend gonna say, like these awkward moments, or you know, like these climaxes in the story. I was just like like, I was like, oh, I was so nervous to was reading about it, because you know, teenagers, you know, and there's mistakes they can make, and the interactions they can have with their friends. The one thing, because she even talks about it in this, Betsy talks about in the story, how she's always wanted to be a writer, but because she's entering high school and she has a lot more obligations to want to be more social, because none of her friends are writers, just her, and so she kind of puts that on the side, the back burner, because she's focusing a lot more on her friendships and the boys. And so it's the main conflict with the story is, you know, her trying to juggle, you know, what's more important in her life, and trying to find like a balance within that. So that's why I was like, oh, I was kind of like mad at her for not focusing more on writing, but in the story it resolves with her with writing. Okay, so this next one is another mystery, and this one I heard a lot about, and so I wanted to pick it up. It's The Cat Who Could Read Backwards by Lillian Jackson Braun. This is the first book in the Cat Who series, and this opens up with a reporter who he's coming back to a town, and he's gonna write for this newspaper, and he gets involved with this like weird like rich kind of mysterious guy who has a cat, and he ends up being a tenant in the apartment, and the cat is just fascinating because the cat can read backwards. The cat acts a little bit weird. He's kind of like a human because he's trying to communicate with the cat, and the cat helps him solve this mystery. There's a couple murders that take place, of course, in a mystery series, and the cat is helping solve the mystery. It's a really fun, interesting take on a mystery, and it's a little bit darker than a normal cozy mystery. I mean, it was a little bit more like gruesome. I don't know how we could say that, but you know, it wasn't as light reading as a cozy mystery. It's a little bit darker, and so I'm planning to continue on this series. And then the last two books I finished on Saturday were graphic novels or comic books. So this one was a cute little story, kind of like I guess you'd say it's a children's comic book. It's Narwhal, Unicorn of the Sea by Ben Clanton. And this was a cute story about kind of like an unknown fish who this jellyfish comes upon, and the narwhal is the name of the character with the unicorn, and he doesn't know that he's special, but the jellyfish is like, there's no other fish like you, and he's like, oh, that's amazing. And so he kind of like brings the jellyfish along to it's a really light read of like how he is interacting with meeting all these different characters, and then he gives them all these unicorns, and so they're all like sharing in the joy of being unique. I'm not sure if I want to continue on with this graphic novel, but it looks like a delightful children's story, all about how being accepting others of differences and making friends. And this last one that I finished was one I just randomly saw on Hoopla under their comics, which Hoopla is kind of like Overdrive. It's like a library service, and this is Moonstruck, by Volume 1, Magic to Brew, and it's by Grace Ellis, Shay Beagle, and Kate Leith. And this is a story about a coffee shop, and there's a werewolf and a centaur, and they're running this coffee shop. And then there's another coffee shop that's run by a witch and another werewolf. And it's a story of how it's mainly focused on the coffee shop run by the centaur and the werewolf, because the werewolf is kind of like really sensitive to being a werewolf. Every time like a dog or a wolf is mentioned, or anything to do with like barking or anything like that, she immediately runs off and cries, because she has a really hard time, I guess, accepting her identity. And it's mainly focused on her and her relationship with another werewolf, and how, you know, she's battling with herself to feel like she's worthy of a relationship. And then it's also has a kind of like mystery involved, because there's a ghost that has an encounter with the centaur, and so it's really about the werewolf and the centaur and her possible girlfriend trying to solve the mystery of the ghost and what's going on with them. So yeah, this one was okay. The story idea was good. It was light and fun. I liked like the magical elements of it, But I didn't like how the main character, the werewolf, was constantly running off and crying. Like, she was a very, like, weak main character, like, drop of a hat, crying it all the time, running away and hiding. And so this character is, like, portrayed, you know, she's at least 16 years old because she's working at this coffee shop and she's living on her own. So I'm assuming she's like 18 to 20. But she didn't act her age at all. So yeah, that was my take on that one. So these are the books I read over this last week. I didn't finish what I wanted to Friday or Saturday, but I finished a bunch today. But I'll talk about that in next week. So yeah, these are the books I read. Let me know if you read any of them, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, BookTube.